Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan, warm greetings. Welcome to the Inclusive Lifelong Learning Conference, ILLC. My name is Gilda, and it is my honor to be the Master of Ceremony of this event. And to start, allow us please to extend our warmest welcome to our guests of honor and speakers. Your Excellency, Coordinating Minister for Economic Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia, Bapak Airlangga Hartarto, Your Excellency Minister of Education Ecuador, Ms. María Brown Pérez, Honorable UNESCO Assistant Director General for Education, Ms. Stefania Giannini, Honorable Executive Director of PMO Kartu Prakerja, Ibu Deni Puspa Purbasari, Honorable Chair of the Governing Board of the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, Mr. Daniel Bachril, esteemed panelists, speakers and moderators, distinguished representatives from ministries and institutions around the world, respectable stakeholders, strategic partners, guests, ladies and gentlemen. The current socio-economic and demographic realities demand new, wider, and more complex competencies in order to understand, anticipate, and deal with both the enormous potential and growing risks of the fast-changing new social and economic order. Lifelong learning is therefore more than ever now continuously recognized and actively pursued as the key to education and human development. This Lifelong Learning Conference, the ILLC, takes stock of national strategies in the region and beyond and facilitates a focused exchange amongst countries. The ILLC identifies good practices and innovations in adult learning and education, upskilling, reskilling, including from other regions and countries. ILLC contextualizes the Marrakesh Framework for Action and identifies areas of action and for cooperation. ILLC presents the monitoring framework for the MFA and discusses its implementation at country level. We have a lot of work at hand. These few days, from today, Monday the 3rd, until Wednesday the 5th of July 2023. As our gracious host, to welcome you to this conference, let us watch this video remarks from the Coordinating Minister for Economic Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia and host of ILLC, His Excellency Airlangga Hartarto.
Good morning, Your Excellency, Honorable Chair of Governing Board, UNESCO Institute of Lifelong Learning, Ambassador Pakistan to Indonesia, Ambassador Romania to Indonesia, Vice Minister of Education and Sport Law, Charge d'Affaires of Kuwait to Indonesia, Mayor of Goyang City of Republic of Korea, Country Director ILO Indonesia, Mayor Pariaman Indonesia, Deputy Minister for Digital Economy, Manpower and Small and Medium Enterprises, Executive Director or Project Officer of Kartu Prakerja, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Bali. It is an honor for Indonesia to host the Bali Inclusive Lifelong Learning Conference together with UNESCO Institute of Lifelong Learning. Learning throughout life is paramount importance both for individual, for society as a whole. It serves a powerful tool in empowering individuals worldwide to confront pressing global challenges that lie ahead, including climate change, demographic shift, labor market volatility, and more. Lifelong learning also plays a central role in equipping individuals with the knowledge and skills necessary to fully harness the benefit of technological advancement, including those driven by generative AI. In this era of disruption, the key to thriving lies in our ability to adapt, to skill, reskill, and upskill. In short, it lies embracing the lifelong learning. Responding to this challenge, Indonesia took the initiative with the UNESCO Institute of Lifelong Learning to organize this inclusive lifelong learning conference. We as governments need to create enabling policies and effective programs. We also need to collaborate to encourage lifelong learning initiatives. Honorable guests, with a population of more than 280 million people, Indonesia stands as the fourth most populous country in the world. We are one nation of over 17,000 islands, 1,300 ethnic groups, and 1,200 languages, which is making us true embodiment of our country motto, Unity in Diversity. Indonesia is blessed with abundant natural resources, but the key factor in our nation's prosperity also lies fostering in high-quality workforce. Recognizing this, I have prioritized our skilling, reskilling, and upskilling program Kartu Prakerja as a top governmental agenda. Indonesia Kartu Prakerja program, launched during the pandemic in 2020, has since helped more than 17 million people. It has become proof of our commitment to support individuals in their lifelong learning journey. The success of Kartu Prakerja in improving the skills and knowledge of its beneficiary is evident. Multiple independent evaluations have affirmed the program provision of quality training that promotes lifelong learning, integrates digital technology into learning practices, and offer tailored training options that align with the interests and needs of the learners. As a result, employment program beneficiaries and learning habits with digital technology have witnessed a remarkable increase of 12% and 90% respectively. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in light of our commitment to lifelong learning, I am proud to launch the I'm a Lifelong Learner campaign today in collaboration with UNESCO. This campaign serves as foundation of global movement, initiating and uniting lifelong learners around the world who are passionate about learning and inspiring others. Let us use this campaign as a platform to emphasize that the right to education should be inclusive of all ages and backgrounds. I warmly invite each and every one of you to join us in this endeavor. In conclusion, I extend my gratitude to all of you for being part of this important conference and wish you a fruitful, enjoyable stay in Bali, Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Airlangga Hartarto. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now honored to present the launch of the I'm a Lifelong Learner campaign by the President of the Republic of Indonesia, His Excellency Joko Widodo. And let's now turn to your left and right, commit to one another, and state that I am a lifelong learner. Go ahead, take a few seconds. Yes, turn to one another. Very well. This is the value vibe that we are talking about. Congratulations for your commitment. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, allow us please to present next a video speech from Honorable UNESCO Assistant Director General for Education, Ms. Stefania Giannini.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, everyone has the right to education. This is enshrined in the Article 26 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Education is a universal right, a right for everyone, no matter where they come from. But it also means a right at every age and every stage of life. Education is a lifelong learning process. And we, as a global community, made a commitment last year to provide lifelong learning opportunities for all by 2030. And now to build a culture of lifelong learning is not only to acknowledge every person's fundamental right to education, but also to equip ourselves to better navigate the significant transitions of our time. We live in an ever-evolving world, characterized by rapid technological advancement, artificial intelligence, and influenced by labor market volatility, climate change, and demographic shifts. And in our world, lifelong learning to help us adapt and make meaningful contributions to our communities and societies has become more critical than ever. We have a lot of work ahead of us. 763 million adults lack today basic literacy. Nearly half of all adults are not digitally literate. And as the 5th UNESCO Global Report on Adult Learning and Education shows, those who need adult learning the most marginalized, migrants, indigenous population, the elderly, or with the differently able, are the mostly likely to be deprived of learning opportunities. So we are far, very far from fulfilling the commitment to the lifelong learning that we made last year when over 140 countries met in Morocco and signed off on the Marrakesh Framework for Action. And by doing so, they pledged to turn the vision of a right of lifelong learning into reality. While UNESCO member states made strong pledges at various events, including most importantly the Transformative Education Summit in New York, as we all know. And these collective commitments show that we recognize the importance of learning throughout life and show our shared determination as a global community to prioritize and transform education for all, including adult learners. Well, ladies and gentlemen, now is the time to translate all these commitments into action. And this is why we are here today. We must develop inclusive policies backed by adequate funding and implement effective programs that empower individuals throughout learning, regardless of background or age, to find solutions and accelerate progress. UNESCO leads the follow-up to the tests and on the implementation of the Marrakesh Framework for Action. Only by working together we can build a new social contract for education, with lifelong learning perspective as its guiding principle. At Confintel last year, as you maybe remember, Madam Saleh Work, the President of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia and Chair of the International Commission for the Futures of Education report, actually stressed, quoting, "The right to education throughout life is a collective responsibility. A failure to deliver on this would be our collective failure. And we cannot afford to fail. We must empower learners worldwide. When we witness the transformative power of lifelong learning in action, we see how it changes lives in concrete terms. To showcase the transformative power of learning across all ages, I'm proud to launch today the I'm a Lifelong Learner campaign. I'm particularly honored to launch the campaign here in the Republic of Indonesia, where the government's remarkable Kartu Prakerja program provided reskilling and upskilling opportunities to some 70 million learners in the last 3 years alone. It's really impressive. And I'm eager to see all these learners join our ImALifelongLearner campaign and share their learning stories, their experience in inspiring others to join it. I invite then all of you to join the campaign and be part of the global movement about lifelong learning, to promote lifelong learning. Let me then conclude by warmly thanking the Republic of Indonesia for hosting this important conference. I wish you all of you fruitful discussions and look forward to shaping the future of inclusive lifelong learning together with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ms. Stefania Giannini, for the message on the campaign. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to next invite for a virtual remarks Her Excellency Minister of Education Ecuador, Ms. María Brown Pérez.
Hello and good morning, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I am envious that I'm not there with you in Bali, such a beautiful place. As the Minister of Education for Ecuador, I am honored to address you today on behalf of a country that is deeply committed to the principles of lifelong learning and inclusive education. I would like to share with you some of the key actions that our government has undertaken to promote education for all in Ecuador. It's a small country in South America with only 18 million inhabitants. First and foremost, we have made significant strides in expanding access to education. We have now 87.5% of 18-year-olds that complete secondary education. We firmly believe that education is a fundamental right and no child should be left behind. And to achieve this, we have implemented various programs to ensure that every person has access to quality education, regardless of their age and socioeconomic background. Over the past decade, our enrollment rates have increased considerably, but we acknowledge that there is still work to be done in reaching everyone. In addition to access and quality, we have placed a strong emphasis on promoting inclusivity in our education system. We have taken significant steps to ensure that children with disabilities and those from marginalized communities have equal opportunities to learn and thrive. Our public schools are inclusive, welcome children with disabilities, migrant population, and refugee population. We have one of the most open and inclusive public policies in the region for migrant and refugees population, which requires no prerequisites for any child to access free education, even for families on the move and with no documentation. Moreover, we recognize the importance of lifelong learning in the rapidly changing world we live. Our government has focused on promoting adult education and vocational training programs to equip individuals with the skills needed for the job market. We have established partnerships, industries, and businesses to ensure that our curriculum is aligned with the needs of the labor market, fostering and ensuring that they can seamlessly transition to employment. By the end of 2023, we will have a new competency-based curriculum and new secondary technical and professional options for our secondary level students. These changes are designed to be more in tune with the labor market and higher education opportunities, reducing the number of adults with incomplete education. Furthermore, we have implemented the Todos al Aula, or everyone to the classroom, to address the issue of out-of-school children. This program mobilizes our teams to the most vulnerable communities, ensuring that we have no child behind. In 2023 alone, we have allocated and brought back to the education system more than 22,000 children between the age of 5 and 14 who were previously out of school. For those students with a significant learning gap, we have implemented an acceleration program, which enables them to achieve the expected learning outcomes for their age in a shorter period of time, allowing them to be reintegrated into their classrooms. We also provide adult education services ranging from literacy programs to secondary education diplomas. These services are available in face-to-face, blended, and distance learning formats, ensuring that adults have access to education regardless their circumstances. At the national level, we also are committed to providing education for incarcerated individuals. Currently, there are over 21,000 incarcerated individuals in Ecuador who are illiterate or have incomplete education. We serve 32.6% of this population, 7,000 incarcerated students enrolling in 33 centers of deprivation of liberty nationwide. In 2023, we have implemented technical education, secondary level education in 13 of these centers, offering professional fields such as agriculture and livestock, agroecology, furniture manufacturing, and assembly, and the clothing industry. To enhance the teaching and learning experience, we have embraced technology platforms like Moodle for distance learning and virtual learning. This platform allows teachers to propose additional activities that ensure that adequate teaching learning process. Technical teams continuously innovate and enrich the products of this platform, which allows us to use it with students nationally, but also internationally. Distance education services for adults are available for Ecuadorian citizens in countries as Chile, Spain, United Kingdom, Italy, Belgium, and Hungary. In the academic year 22-23, we have a total of 187,000 students enrolled in our education programs, with 7,000 students attending classes in person, 166,000 students following the blended learning approach, and 40,300 students engaged in distance education. These numbers reflect our commitment to providing inclusive quality education that characterizes the diverse needs and preferences of our students. Lastly, we have placed a strong emphasis on international cooperation and collaboration in education. We believe that by learning from and sharing experiences with other countries, we can further enrich our education system. We have actively participated in global education forums such as this and in Confentia, and learn from best practices to contribute to global dialogue on education. In conclusion, our actions in Ecuador have been guided by a firm belief in the transformative power of education. We have expanded access, improved quality, promoted inclusivity, embraced lifelong learning, harnessed technology, and fostered international collaboration. While we acknowledge the challenges remain, we are committed to continue improving our educational system and ensuring that individual in Ecuador has equal opportunities to learn, grow, and succeed. Thank you for letting us share our experience, and thank you for your attention.
Excellency, for the remarks, we kindly request that you stay on with us for the panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, moving on to the main agenda of this conference, we will start plenary with the Ministerial Panel. Without further ado, we invite Honorable Chair of the Governing Board of the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, Mr. Daniel Baril, and Honorable Executive Director of PMO Kartu Prakerja, Ibu Deni Puspa Purbasari. Please.
It's a great pleasure for us to welcome you all to start the core business of our meeting. Your Excellency, Mr. Joko, Presidential Chief of Staff of the Republic of Indonesia. Your Excellency, Madam María Pérez, Minister of Education of Ecuador. Mrs. Deni Puspa Purbasari, Executive Director of Kartu Prakerja. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you here at the Inclusive Lifelong Learning Conference on behalf of the co-host, the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Madam Minister Pérez, Minister of Education for Ecuador, for your strong words and insightful intervention on the importance of adult learning and education in Ecuador and beyond. If there's any question in the audience, I would be happy to take them. You are invited to ask your question on Slido using the QR code that you were provided. Before that, I would like to ask some questions to Madam Minister Pérez. The first question, Madam Minister, from the government of Ecuador perspective, what is the most important aspect of Ecuador's policy to promote adult learning and education? And if you want, you can get a wider scope and talk about the region and Latin America. Madam Minister?
There we go. Thank you. Thank you for the question. I think that all the countries in the world, we face similar challenges, and we need to continue promoting adult education. In Ecuador, I would think that in order to follow and be aligned to the Marrakesh Action Framework and the commitments we've all agreed to work towards as different countries and nations, I would sum up 10 important aspects that I think are the most important in order to keep moving forward. First of all is equitable access. We need to ensure that adult individuals have access to educational opportunities, regardless of their gender, geographical location, socioeconomic status, or living condition. Secondly, flexible programs. We need to be aware that especially adult population are usually working and specific needs and need opportunities that are more flexible and include various modes of studies and also that they are aligned with their schedules and lifestyle. Third of all, the relevance and pertinence. I think this conference comes in a good moment in which we need to understand what we need in everyday lives, with the workplace, and it involves also providing programs that to acquire practical skills, application of knowledge, and reskilling, just as was said previously. Fourthly, support and guidance. We need to provide guidance through the adult learning journey, and this includes tutoring, academic advising, vocational and psychological counseling, among other services. Fifthly, I would like to say recognition of the prior learning. This is something that we also need to acknowledge, that adults have learning that they were acquired prior to starting these programs. That it's important to recognize the value of these formal and non-formal learning opportunities that they've had in order to advance in their learning process and in a lifelong learning perspective. Partnership and collaboration. Promoting adult education requires collaboration among different stakeholders. Seventhly, evaluation and monitoring. We need to have always regular assessments, and essential to measure the impact of all these programs to see how this can change the lives of the people that are accessing to them. Sensitization and awareness, promoting the importance of adult education in society and trying to bring to the discussion the lifelong learning opportunities for all in a more concrete way. Also continue reducing access and learning gaps in our younger population, so that all people, when they reach the age of 18, have a secondary level education. This will reduce the number of adults that don't have the basic education requirements in each of the countries. And this also starts providing better opportunities for further learning and also access to more better opportunities. And lastly, include a perspective of education in a lifelong learning also requires the population to have a co-responsibility vision of education. Making education opportunities more diverse, accessible to all, requires that we have a holistic approach and include other aspects such as socio-emotional learning or even mental health opportunities for adults, things that we've seen that are so important in this context. These points are fundamental to continue promoting adult education, not only in Ecuador, I think in many of our countries, and moving forward in the Marrakesh Action Framework. I hope that this answers your question.
It does in a very comprehensive way. Thank you, Madam Minister. If you allow me, I would have a second question, more like your item 6 or 7, I think, about partnerships. How can the government collaborate with the private sector and educational institutions to enhance training effectiveness in the context of Ecuador and or the region of Latin America? And more particularly, what policy has Ecuador implemented to keep the training relevant to face the disruption we've encountered in the past 3 years? Madam Minister?
Well, in partnerships, we have approached the private sector in order for them to be included in the definition of the curriculum and also they offer the different aspects that they need to include in their own businesses for us to adjust the curriculums and be more in tune with their needs, but also in tune with the needs of our students. It's not only about them, but also about the students, putting the students in the center of any policy-making process. It's so important. But having the private sector being part of the discussion contributes to a better and more comprehensive curriculum. So the process of curriculum reform definitely has included the private sector, and this is something that maybe takes a longer period of time to accomplish, but it pays off. And also in dual settings and dual learning settings in which many countries in the world have so much experience, bringing that experience in order for students to be able to practice their knowledge within the working place so they can also understand how what they're learning will be implemented in a working environment and what the working environment requires from them in order for them to have all these skills developed or reskilling if they need to be reskilled. And in your second question, well, I think that's I think it must be one of the most difficult challenges we face in the education sector right now. In a fast changing world in which we have new technologies, artificial intelligence, and also new challenges, education needs to move as fast as all of the rest of the world is moving. And this is many times challenging in an education system that usually has been the same for many decades and even centuries. So we need to start moving faster, I think. And one of the most important aspects of this transformation in education, and this was discussed very much in the Transforming Education Summit in New York, is that we need to start thinking of what are the foundational learning skills that we need to promote, such as reading, writing, and reading comprehension, and cooking. But also, what are the competencies that we need to foster in a changing world, in a changing environment, in which we bring to the table things like, for example, sustainable development. The video we saw previously, we saw one of the things that young people want to learn more and more is how can they contribute to the world in a more sustainable way, and how can we ensure that the humanity has a better relationship with nature and an environment. So this is something that we need to think about also in adult learning and non-formal learning opportunities. Also, inclusion, one of the subjects of this conference. How can we include more people and embrace diversity in a very diverse world in which we have so many cultures? And this can be done also incorporating in a more vivid way the culture, arts, and literature, and the play. Sometimes we forget that many of these experiences and these learning opportunities are better brought to the students through play. And not only, I'm mentioning play not only because I think that play is a mechanism by which we can learn when we're younger, but also that we need as adults to start thinking more on about how we ourselves enjoy and play and learn through experiences throughout our lives. So I am sure this is not the only answer possible. This, I think, it's one of the most challenging questions that we face right now, and probably one of the most important questions that you in this conference will be discussing amongst each other, is how can we keep up with these changes and try to keep education as up to date as possible and responding to the needs of the population right now.
Thank you, Madam Minister. Thank you for underlining education for sustainable development. Right now here in Bali, it's the dry season and it's pouring rain. And in my country, in Canada, there's gigantic forest fire. I think it's never rained so through that the climate crisis is right in front of us. We're living it when we go through our doors, so it's really important that you underline that. Thank you, Madam Minister. It is my pleasure now to introduce Madam Deni Puspa Purbalasi, the Executive Director of Kartu Prakerja, Indonesia, who will respond to Madam Pérez's statement. Ibu Deni, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. So I think all the points that Minister Pérez mentioned are very important, and I believe that many of us have seen the relevance for all of us, because each country, I believe, we face the same problems, because some problems actually faced by the world, not only faced by individual countries, but some specificity must be there. That's why by having a forum of discussion like we have today is very important in order to exchange views and then share practices and then build new collaboration, better collaboration, more productive collaboration. And as you see that, as Minister Pérez mentioned, there are vast of efforts made by government of Ecuador in order to make sure that education is inclusive. Education serves people with different backgrounds, and that requires commitment and diligent efforts. And we have to see the data, and then we have to keep improving. And we have to be optimistic that together, we actually can solve the problems, no matter how fast the technology is. But again, together, with hard work, we can answer the problems. That's
Thank
my
you.
response.
I would summarize it in unity and diversity.
Mr. President mentioned that.
Thank you, Ibu Deni, for your response. We opened the question from the room. So far, I don't see any question. But I will, there's one question I could ask to the Minister. You talk about the challenges of implementing, and our conferences right now for the next 2-3 days would be about implementing the Marrakesh Framework for Action. From your perspective as a minister regarding the challenge of implementing a policy, how do you see the challenges and the main obstacles and what we have to really focus on to be able to implement such an ambitious document like the Marrakesh Framework of Actions? If you have some thoughts about that, it would be very relevant for our discussions. Madam Minister?
I think that the first answer that comes to my mind, I am sure that many colleagues from other countries think the same, is financing, investing in education. I think one of the main challenges at this point is that in many occasions when countries have to decide what are the priorities when investing public resources, some short-term actions come to mind. And education usually is more of a medium-term, long-term return investment, but it's the best investment. So moving the discussion of lifelong learning opportunities and trying to achieve the Marrakesh framework, I think one of the main challenges is getting other policymakers from different backgrounds and interdisciplinary approach to really advocate for the investing in education in order to resolve many of the issues that we're facing as a planet right now. When we're talking, you were saying the importance of sustainable development and climate action. We are all aware of these, and I think it's in the top of mind of everybody in the planet at this point. But not so often we see that the response has a better or greater investment in education for sustainable development, or trying to work through education in order to change the mindset of the population and really drastically move towards a more sustainable solution. So I think invest, and this is one of the examples of investment, but also investing in better quality education requires as well giving up or prioritizing what are the main actions that a country has to implement in order to precisely include. Also in the Marrakesh framework, I think that we want to address the gender gap. One of the things that the Marrakesh framework says explicitly, and we agreed to that when we signed it, is that we need to also have a gender approach to inclusion. Many of our countries are gaps in learning gaps and learning opportunities sometimes don't reach all the populations in the same way. And that the gender gap is one of the gaps that we have and need to address more openly, and trying to find solutions that also help women that usually are caregivers in their context be able to access to education opportunities while having their children in a safe environment is something that we need to take into consideration. How the social support in the context of a country can help a woman participate in education in a lifelong learning education process, but also having her children in a safe and educational environment at the same time. So this is also something that needs to I believe needs to be in the core of the discussion of the implementation of the Marrakesh framework. These are two of the main challenges, not the only ones, but the two ones that I would like to highlight.
Thank you, Madam Minister. If we can use a bit more of your precious time, we receive a question from a participant, and I will read the question to you. As a country that places learning high on the national agenda, how does your country ensure access to inclusive lifelong learning opportunities in disadvantaged communities? Madam Minister?
Well, this is a great question because Ecuador is being a small country, it is also very diverse. We have, as I said, 18 million people in our population, but more than half of that population lives in rural areas. So one of the main policies that we're now trying to move forward is thinking how we can reach rural areas and rural populations that are usually not very densely populated areas. So children and the populations are scattered in a wider territory, and it's more difficult to provide better access to education, face-to-face education and learning. And also have 14 nationalities and languages, not as many as Indonesia, of course, but for such a small country, this is a very diverse context. And so two actions are being taken care of. One is having an education model that responds to the context of rural realities, that includes multi-age learning groups in order for us to have teachers that move to these contexts and places that are further from cities and can help children and accompany children in their process of education. And the second is fostering investing and trying to work with the indigenous populations that live in many of these rural contexts in order for us to have education opportunities in the mother tongue languages of these populations, but also that respect the culture and that the policies are defined with them, for them. So we created a Secretariat of Education for the indigenous and populations and Afro-descendant population in Ecuador, and are moving forward in providing them with more capabilities, budgets, and also the resources, other resources, in order to reach with better quality education to the populations in a more contextualized manner. And for adult learning education in this context, in these more diverse countries, contexts, in order to be more inclusive, we are also trying to work investing in more in better technologies. And this is something that I'm sure that you will talk further during the conference, is how to increase the access of all populations to technologies and how to approach the gaps within our populations in access to connectivity, but also the use of other resources such as artificial intelligence.
Thank you, Madam Minister. I thank you a lot for this enlightened discussion and taking the time to answer more than 4 questions. And I use the occasion also to thank the coordinating minister that took time from a very busy schedule in Sydney to record a message, but also Madam Giannini that took time to record a message just to share her input to our conference. Madam Minister Pérez, you can now disconnect and leave the panel, and I wish you, I guess, a good evening at home. We're early morning here, but in the evening the day before to you, and a warm thank you from us on the conference.
Let's give our applause. Please stay with us. We do need a photo together. So please, for our moderator and speaker, who is in person here, please stand and take a photo together with Madam Minister. In Bali, we go 3, 2, 1, Bali. All right, thank you. Thank you very much. We now invite you to kindly please return to your seats. Oh, a photo together. Right, she's back on. All right, please stand with, oh. Can we request for her to return? Once again, Your Excellency, please stay with us. We would like to have a photo together. Ah, there we go. All right, please take your seats. Yes, smile. In Bali, we go 3, 2, 1, Bali. Yay, thank you.
Now it gives me great pleasure to... Sorry, my mic just moved. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you, along with Ibu Deni, the comprehensive program of this conference. Over the course of the next 3 days, we have a lineup of inspiring plenary and workshop sessions where we will engage in discussion on strategies and action to implement the Marrakesh Framework for Action on Adult Learning and Education. Together, we aim to pave the way towards making lifelong learning a tangible reality for all individuals. Without further ado, I am delighted to pass the floor to Ibu Deni to share her point of view about the importance of lifelong learning and why we need this conference to continue the spirit of the Marrakesh Framework for Action resulting from Confintea 7. Ibu Deni?
Thank you very much. So welcome everyone. Thank you. It has been an honor for us to have this conference together with you. So first of all, I would like to say what Madam Giannini already mentioned. So again, lifelong learning has been, we already understand the importance of lifelong learning in order to improve the lives of people. Not only individual, but also people in our community and also in our country. And second thing is that it is very hard to implement how actually we do it on the ground, because the problems very complex and we have to serve so many. And the most important thing is that how we actually provide access to the marginalized groups, to the underserved groups, who they are, and how we are going to serve them. So like I said before, it takes a lot of effort and it takes commitment to talk, to listen, to come to them, and then to be able to basically create and structure our programs in order to reach out to these groups. And then the homework is not over, because we have to be able to use whatever resources that we have, networks, technologies, local capabilities, local wisdoms, and so on, and then get, as soon as possible, data from the ground. And then based on the data, work hard in order to adjust the practices in order to adjust the policies. So it requires agility in all levels. So, Pak Baril, I would like to share, I would like to listen to all of you, all the experience you have in order to improve the program of Prakerja in Indonesia. Because as you see, Prakerja is very big, but big program, of course, it takes a lot of cost, and our budget is limited. I can say that there is no room for error. We have to work really fast, adjust really fast, in order to make sure that we are on the right track and deliver what is expected. That's why I want to hear the experiences from all of you, because I believe that every country has done this before, but many of us do not know. And then in this room, not only the government, but also local government, NGOs, universities, international development agencies, and also corporations, foundations, philanthropies, and of course, we also involve research institutes to come here in order to share again and then have a peer-to-peer learning. So we are actually doing what lifelong learning is here in Bali. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. You set the table really well for what we have to do to learn, but to learn fast because we have to move fast. Yes. During these 3 days, we will go through 3 main topics. First, promoting adult learning and education within a lifelong learning perspective. Second, making inclusive adult learning and education a reality for all, I would add. And third, implementing adult education and education opportunity for all. And we will end up with a final statement, the Bali Manifesto, entitled Embracing Inclusion, a Roadmap to Lifelong Learning for All, that will summarize our conclusion for making lifelong learning more inclusive. The draft of the manifesto has been shared with all participants. We should be delighted to receive by mail your observations, if any, so we will submit to you the final draft for adoption during Plenary 7. Madam Master of Ceremony, I hand the mic to you.
Thank you very much, and let's give our round of applause once again to Mr. Moderator and Speaker. Thank you for sharing the important conference agenda. We would now like to invite both of you to please return to your seats. We are preparing for our next session, which is Plenary 1. Let's give a round of applause once again. Thank you very much. Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the outcome document of CONFI 7, the Marrakesh Framework for Action, recognizes lifelong learning as an important promoter of inclusion and a precondition for social and ecological justice, health and well-being, change and transformation. While MFA is not a binding agreement, it is nevertheless a key milestone in policy on lifelong learning and an important measure of countries' progress towards a just, inclusive, peaceful, and sustainable world. Robust efforts, political will, and effective partnerships are now required from member states to turn its promise into true reality. Ladies and gentlemen, for your information, for those of you later on in this plenary session 1 would like to raise a question, there is a microphone button in front of you, and you may tap and press the microphone button, and this simultaneous pressing will be queued by our system at the back, and then the moderator will then call you and later ask you to state your question on the microphone. So for the next plenary session 1, please, if you would like to raise your question, once again, press the microphone button, and this will be queued by our system for the moderator later to call you to state your question. Ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to move on to the next agenda of our conference. As you know, it is entitled Plenary 1, the Transformative Power of Adult Learning and Education, Inclusive Lifelong Learning, a Response to Global Challenges, International Development Frameworks, CONFETI 7, and the Marrakesh Framework for Action. It is with delight that we invite to return back onto center stage Honorable Chair of the Governing Board, the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, Mr. Daniel Baril, to moderate the panel discussion.
Thank you very much for joining us for that second leg of our conferences. I had the occasion, I was presented as chair of the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, but in my regular life, I'm the executive director of a Canadian research centers on adult education policy, the Institute for Cooperation in Adult Education. I've been in the field for about 25 years, analyzing policies. The time is up for presenting me, I guess. Like it was said, all participants will be able to ask questions after a presentation were made. We'll wait after the four presentation are be made. So each after the other, I will invite our distinguished speaker to come join me on the podium. Our first speaker is Mr. Bader Salim Adam Al-Ghafri. He is a lifelong learning supervisor at the Ministry of Education in the Sultanate of Oman. He is actively involved in shaping the educational landscape of the Sultanate. He will make a presentation on the adult education strategy in Oman. Our guest speaker is our keynote speaker for this presentation, and you have 10 minutes. The floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning, everybody here. Thank you for being here in Bali in the Inclusive Lifelong Learning Conference. I would like to thank you, Mr. Daniel, for introducing me. And honestly, I'm very excited to share with you the efforts of Ministry of Education in Oman regarding adult learning and education. Okay. I'm going to cover the following point in my presentation today. As you can see here, the first point will be about Oman legacy of lifelong learning. Then I will move to lifelong learning in the Sultanate of Oman in general. Then I will talk about national policies and directions relevant to lifelong learning in Sultanate of Oman. Then I will talk about the current system or the status of lifelong learning in Oman. Then I will move to current challenges of lifelong learning in Oman that make us to rethink again about the system and extend further inclusion of lifelong learning via developing strategy for adult education in the Sultanate of Oman. Okay, good. First of all, طبعاً I'm from Sultanate of Oman, and you know that Sultanate of Oman is one of the Gulf countries, as you can see here. And as you can see here, some information about Oman here. Oman was a vital center on what was called the Silk Way between the East and the West. And when I talk about cultural links to lifelong learning in Oman, as Muslim, we are asked to study from cradle to grave. So lifelong learning is embedded in Omani society and is very important. Now let's move to lifelong learning in the Sultanate of Oman. So what do we have about lifelong learning in the Sultanate of Oman? We have, actually we are lucky because we have many supportive policy document to support lifelong learning in Oman. Also, we have availability of different initiatives in different sectors in Oman that support lifelong learning. Also, what happened, we all know that we all get benefit from the pandemic or the COVID pandemic to improve lifelong learning, especially by utilizing online delivery of lifelong learning. And also we have many collaboration in Oman between different sectors. For example, we have a collaboration between Ministry of Education and Ministry of Social Development regarding delivering these programs and initiatives for lifelong learning. Okay. Now I will talk about the national policies and directions relevant to lifelong learning. Okay, I will talk about Oman Vision 2040, then the National Strategy for Education 2040, Oman Qualification Framework, the new education law, it was launched in May 2023, and finally, educational philosophy. To start with, okay, as you can see here, this is the vision document of Oman Vision 2040. This vision, or its education, providing education for all, is one of its priorities. And as you can see here in the strategic direction, inclusive education, which is aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals, and lifelong learning. Regarding the new education system here, the new education law in Oman, this education, as you can see here in Chapter 3, Article 29, as you can see here, post-basic education includes preparing students for lifelong learning. So this emphasizes the importance of lifelong learning and providing them with the necessary knowledge, skills, and competencies that qualify them to pursue specialized or university education or to join the labor market. Okay, now let's move to philosophy of education in Oman. As you can see here, lifelong learning is a fundamental principle in this philosophy in Oman. There is one which is the 16th principle. It's under title lifelong learning, as you can see here. Okay. Now, when we talk about the National Strategy for Education, it includes lifelong learning in two strategies, Strategy 2 and Strategy number 3, as you can see here. Okay. And here we have Oman Qualification Framework. Oman Qualification Framework identify the learning pathways and also identify the importance of the recognition of prior learning, which is very important, as you know, in lifelong learning. Okay. Can we help the back? Okay, sorry. Okay. Okay. Now I will talk about status of inclusive lifelong learning in the Ministry of Education of Oman. As you can see here, first I can see the Sultanate of Oman achieved a remarkable achievement regarding decreasing the illiteracy rate here in Oman. As you can see here, in 2021, we achieved zero illiteracy, 0.61 at the group 15 to 44, which we call it the productive group, and 5.1 at the group 15 years and above. Also, now, as I told you in the beginning, we are developing a new strategy for adult education in Oman. I will talk about it in details, inshallah, in the end of my presentation. Also, we use digital social media in lifelong learning, and Also, in my country, we open literacy classes and adult education centers in all places of Oman every year for free. Also, regarding adult learners in grades 7 to 12, can access to recorded lessons through an educational channel we call it Mawrid on YouTube. Also, we provide also face-to-face classes for adult learners with hearing disability. As you can see here in this chart, there is a noticeable decrease in the illiteracy rate from 2010, as you can see, to 2022. As you can see here, in 2010, the illiteracy rate was 14.1, and in 2022, it decreased to 5.1, and this is in group 15 plus. Regarding the productive group, as you can see here, the illiteracy rate decreased from, as you see here, from 3.5 to 0.61, and actually we are happy for reaching this percentage. Now, also, I want to talk about extra efforts for Ministry of Education in Oman here. Reaching out to special groups, we have programs for prisoners, and we have also programs for juveniles. Also, we have programs for special needs and people with disabilities. Regarding diverse and flexible teaching modes, we have self or home study, independent study program for grades 7 to 12. And also we have accelerated literacy programs and projects. We have actually two important programs. We have the Literate Village, and also we have the cooperative literacy schools. Regarding curriculum redesign, actually we have special curriculums for grade 1 to 3. We have special curriculums. Now, current challenge in lifelong learning in the Sultanate of Oman. When we talk about the current system of Oman. Now, what do we have here? We have need for change in the system to match the change in the socio-economic development of the country. Also need to integrate the use of technology, and this is very important, the integration of technology in adult education and learning. Need to provide equitable access to lifelong learning. Also, we need to upgrade the quality of the curriculums, teaching methods, also qualifications of teachers. Also need for relevant of lifelong learning for all individuals via or through flexible learning pathways, and this is very important. And finally, need to create a framework for recognition and validation of adult education certificates in Oman. Now, because of these challenges, we think to develop a new strategy for adult education, and this strategy is still not approved, is still under the process of approval, and the vision of this strategy is an inclusive and flexible education system that keeps pace with educational development and achieve social welfare for adults. As you can see here, this strategy outlines 8 strategic objectives. As a team for developing this strategy, we believe that these strategy objectives are very important. To start with, the first one, empowering adults with skills and facilitating their access to higher education and employment opportunities in the labor market. The second one, integrating relevant technology and practical curriculum. Next, ensuring qualified educators for adult education, enhancing adult digital literacy, and this is also very important to move to digital literacy now. Establishing a framework for recognition of adult education certificates, because we are creating different learning pathways, so that's we need a system for recognition for these certificates. Encouraging activity or active community partnership, then establishing a flexible and inclusive evaluation system. Finally, promoting flexible pathways. Actually, we have created different pathways for adults. Inshallah, once we finish this or once this strategy is approved, we can share it with UIL and have a look at it in details. Finally, thank you so much for your attention, and we hope that to work together to promote lifelong learning in in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Algarafri. You just stayed in time and had a very comprehensive presentation. Thank you. You can join me on your seat. I would now invite the three other colleagues to join us for their presentation and our discussion. Mr. Nicolas Jonat, Madame Filani Pisame, and Mr. David Neller. And if I may, for the technical team, if it's possible to show the clock, if it doesn't hide the presentation, it would help the presenter just to stay on time and have a reference point. The second presentation will be done by Mr. Nicolas Jonat, who is leading the inclusive learning team at UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning would be appropriate, learning, where he coordinates the work related to SDG Target 4.6 and monitors the implementation of the Marrakesh Framework for Action. He will make a presentation on harnessing the transformational power of adult learning and education, highlighting the main outcome of the MFA and the monitoring framework. Nicolas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Daniel. So, good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here on behalf of the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning. And I wanted to focus this morning on what we are speaking about since we started this conference, meaning the Confintea and the Marrakesh Framework for Action. So just to come back to the main outcomes of this 7th International Conference for Adult Learning and Education that took place in Morocco, and to see with you what were the main conclusions of this conference. So as you all know, the main outcome was the formal adoption of the Marrakesh Framework for Action. The Marrakesh Framework for Action is quite a short document, so you can read it quite easily, and very comprehensive. And it comes with a series of recommendations that were agreed by all the countries that were present in Marrakesh, so more than 140. And these 6 key recommendations draw an overall picture of what are the main challenges and priorities for the sector of adult learning and education. So in this document, and after these 3 days of conferences in Marrakesh, UNESCO member states agreed on the fact that it is critical to establish new framework and governance arrangements to redesign the system for adult learning and education, to ensure quality of learning, to increase funding, and this echoes directly what Minister Pérez was saying this morning, that funding remains the main challenge for implementing inclusive lifelong learnings. So the 5th was promoting inclusion, and the last one was about expanding learning domains. So we cannot go too much into details, otherwise we would need the whole day to review all the different priorities included in this Marrakesh Framework for Action. I just would like to stress the most important one, or maybe the most meaningful one for our conference of today. So first of all, this Marrakesh Framework for Action stressed the importance of right to lifelong learning. So there is a global move towards right to education, from right to education to right to lifelong learning, meaning that now we are investing beyond formal education, and we are able to consider that every individual in the world, whatever his age, whatever his background, has a right to learn, has a right to skill, reskill or upskill, and so to enjoy opportunities throughout his life. If we want to implement this right, or if we want lifelong learning to become really a right or a kind of human right, it is necessary to make it inclusive, meaning that the access and the participation in learning opportunities should be offered to everyone, whatever I mean, even people who are living in remote areas, even people with disabilities or from linguistic minorities, or people who are facing exclusion in their life in their everyday life. So it's important to make this right really inclusive. And it is only under this condition of making this lifelong learning inclusive that adult learning and education can play its full role and can have this transformative power that everybody acknowledges in the Marrakesh Framework for Action. And just to mention a few of them, in this document, in the Marrakesh Framework for Action, the UNESCO member states recognize that adult learning and education is key when it comes to learning to live together. It's key for improving the citizenship, not only at national level, but at global level. Adult learning and education is an important leveler to improve cultural understanding in general and to eliminate all types of discrimination. But in this document, two other main points were stressed by member states. The first one, and we'll discuss a lot about this during our conference, is the importance of adult lifelong learning. It is importance for adapting to the changing nature of work. Without lifelong learning, we can imagine that the current people who are in the labor market and the newcomers in the labor market would be unable to adapt themselves and to be equipped with the right skills to meet and to adapt to the changing nature of work. And we can just imagine how this labor market changes in the last years after the COVID crisis, or through the rise of artificial intelligence. A lot of new changes are coming continuously, and it's of course it's important for everybody to be able to adapt, to be adapted to this to the change. And lastly, and it echoes also what Daniel was saying and Minister Pérez was saying earlier today, adult learning and education remains important to fight climate changes and to equip people with the right knowledge, behavior, and skills for fighting climate changes. What is important to understand is the nature of this Marrakesh Framework for Action. So as UNESCO, it's our mandate to create the space where member states, where stakeholders, where practitioners and experts can meet, discuss, and effectively implement their commitment included in the Marrakesh Framework for Action. Meaning that this conference, the Confintea 7, was only the starting point of a long journey where UNESCO will do its best to create spaces for everybody to meet, and also create spaces for taking time to monitor and to reflect on what was done and what was not done. So after the conference in Marrakesh, we had a series of regional meetings to try to contextualize the Marrakesh Framework for Action and to be able to identify the key priorities in each region. And the Conference of Bali ends, in fact, this series of consultation and will help us to develop strategies so we can work more efficiently with each region and be able to help them and to support them in implementing an inclusive lifelong learning. And our role after this series of conference and after creating spaces for everybody to share experiences, we will develop a monitoring framework. So thanks to it, every member state will be able to see to what extent the Marrakesh Framework for Action is implemented at their national level, and to see where are still room for improvement and for exchanges with other countries or member states. So we will start with this monitoring framework for action, and we will publish regularly a global report on adult learning and education that will take stock of the current improvement and challenges that are still ahead of us. And this will help us to go through the coming years to the end of the SDGs time frame in 2030. And at that moment, we'll be able to, I hope, to analyze the contribution of adult learning and education on the realization of the different SDGs. So I won't go too much into detail, but just to present you what can be a monitoring framework for the Marrakesh Framework for Action. So it is important to change our view about adult learning and education. As you all know, it's quite challenging to found adult learning and education because it's by nature very flexible, very intersectoral and interministerial, meaning that when the responsibility is too much shared into different ministers, it's very difficult to come to an arrangement and to invest public resources for improvement in adult learning and education. So it's important to promote a sector-wide view of adult learning and education and to see how all the different elements, including in the MFA, are logically linked together. So to identify policy levelers that will help convincing decision makers to invest in adult learning and education sector. And with this theoretical framework in mind, we are able to come up with a monitoring framework with a series of indicators. All our work will be now to translate the Marrakesh Framework for Action into concrete indicators and with a methodology to be able to fill in all these indicators. What we would like to achieve is to build a comprehensive series of not only statistics but information in general that will help all countries to draw the overall picture or overall status of its sector on adult learning and education. And what we would like to achieve with that is to create a common ground for discussions. If we are all talking about the same things, if we are all using the same definitions, the same statistics, then all of our exchanges, all of our meetings like this would be more fruitful because we will all speak about the same topics and we will be able to compare more easily our innovations and solutions. So that's all for me, and I give back the floor to Daniel.
Thank you. Merci, Nicolas. Our third panelist is Madame Filani Pisame. Madame Pisame has had an extensive career at the Ministry of Education and Sports spanning over 5 decades, where she is now Deputy Director General of Department of Non-Formal Education. She has fostered strong relationship with donors and played a pivotal role in securing support for non-formal education initiative nationwide. Mrs. Pisame will make a presentation on adult education strategy in Laos. You have the floor, Madame.
Thank you very much. Okay. Your Excellency, honored guests, distinguished guest participant, development partner, donor, NGO, secretary and team member, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm very pleased to appreciate you kind invited to Plenary Section 1 and sharing about my country on lifelong learning and adult education. As you may know that in the past year, many countries faced the rapid technology advance, climate crisis, labor market, vulnerability, and demographic change, and the impact from COVID-19. This makes many people unemployment, homeless, get poor in young age, as well as many children drop out, leaving school for the income generation. All of which in increasing inquiry of the new knowledge and skill if development region world is a sustainability and the cope with the impact of the climate change in advanced technology. On the purpose of learning activity under the hour of life with aim to improve knowledge, skill, competency related to the personal, community, social perspective. Despite consideration education progress in school enrollment found that challenging remaining achieving inclusive and equitable quality education for young people and adults alike. Lately, international change lifelong learning as the key response to the crisis. Inclusive lifelong learning ensures equal access to education training. Is essential so that every individual, regardless of her and his religion, socioeconomic status, mental, physical condition, gender, age, can benefit from the own learning opportunity. If the country should have a lifelong learning strategy degree, regulation important and the nation. The country has the strategy on LLL. It can help the government pay more role allocated budget to the central to the local level and implementation. Related to the education system, we have to change the flexible learning in order to give opportunity to learner to access to the education to the digital learning, create transferring and order. We have to recognize validation, accreditation, and recognition in our. We would like to share the Lao concept in LLL. Ministry of Education Sport has developed lifelong learning degree. It has approved by the Lao government in the year 2020. It is the first initiative to enable all Lao citizens to access learning opportunity in advance. Their level to education knowledge, vocational, professional capability to develop the sound moral, ethnic, and to be ready to contribution, regional and international integration, national socio-economic development. The government recognized that lifelong learning is an important element in human resource development, as encouraged on the Lao to take any opportunity, learning knowledge, competency, and skill to the next flexible learning method and approach based on the potential learning circumstances and content. Despite lifelong learning, give opportunity to all the Lao people to access to education in order to upgrading academic skill, living condition, social status, according to relevant law and regulation and assessment, recognize accreditation, validation, and equivalency transferring are needed to monitoring quality of learning outcome. The most important that in order to provide the people to access to education, the nationwide and setting up the National Commission for Lifelong Learning. Because the community learning, national community are to the a person who has to the responsibility for the central to the local level. They aspire to the national strategy. They aspire to develop the national strategy or action plan and the monitoring, evaluation, the progress, lifelong learning implementation. As they also have to discuss about the budget allocation to lifelong learning to sector. Why we have to the National Commission for the Lifelong Learning? Because in the Lao PDR, there are many institutions from the ministry, Lao ministry concerned. If we want them to make the institution to lifelong learning, we need them to understand and to be the community. Non-formal education. Non-formal education is parallel secondary role and commission for lifelong learning with access to the community of each for living, monitoring, and evaluation. lifelong learning as well as annual report sent to the local authority supervision. Even though we have the National Commission for the lifelong learning, we also have the secretariat who conducting own information and collecting annual from and checking the implementation from the local and provincial level implementation. Conducting teaching and learning education system, it doesn't mean that even though we have a lifelong learning degree, it doesn't mean we develop the new system. We still use the education system for the lifelong learning. It depends on the university or the school or any institution want to be lifelong learning. So that if they want to have to do that, we provide them the regulation and checking them. And also the teaching and learning system, we still use the curriculum. We don't develop the new curriculum for lifelong learning. We use the same curriculum, but we use the flexible learning strategy, alternative learning approach in order to help learner to have opportunity to learn from the opportunity to the advanced education. So there's regarding to the one institution want to make the lifelong learning institution, we need to have the department of the technology or something to take care of the monitoring and evaluation in order to make sure that they are on the track. Of course, in Laos, the teacher and the facilitator, we have to not develop the new one. We use an existing education system, but we may upgrading the knowledge, lifelong learning concept or alternative learning, flexible learning to the teacher in order to teach lifelong learning. Of course, when we implementation, we living a lot of challenging as the concept of LLL is not widely understood properly due to the lack of budget allocated fund nationwide. Many people understanding the lifelong learning is only responsibility, only the non-formal education, even though that we know that LLL is the formal, non-formal, informal learning. And some people, the most of people still misunderstand between the adult education and non-formal education as the same, but L is the more widely education. And the last one, and for the digital, as I mentioned that we transforming from the traditional to the new technology, we need the digital learning platform. But the digital learning platform, teaching and learning has just implemented and just introduced during the COVID-19, so that the limited only in the city and where internet Wi-Fi available. So that even though we have a strategy, a degree of lifelong learning, we have a long way to go to implementation. We have to do the sub-strategy or action plan to implementation from the central to grassroots level. That's all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Madam Pisami. Our last panelist is David Neller. He is the Director of Prospera, the Australian-Indonesian Partnership for Economic Development. Dr. Neller has a 25 years career with the International Monetary Fund, focusing on emerging markets, especially in Asia and including Indonesia. In addition, he has worked as an advisor to senior government officials in institutional funds management, as well as with the Indonesian and multinational companies in Southeast Asia and China. He will make a presentation on how adult learning and education can be a leveler for development in Indonesia. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real privilege for me to be here today because I've had the great fortune to be part of the journey of Ibu Deni and the Prakerja team. And I'm very passionate about this topic because I do believe that Prakerja is a model which many countries could learn from, and it is the future of Indonesian skill development. And it's only just scratched the surface. So it's a really important thing, and I'm not the Prakerja expert. Budeni can answer all of your technical questions, but I want to provide the framework for thinking about this. And I always start in my thinking, I think of a young woman maybe in a remote part of eastern Indonesia, and she may have graduated high school, but how does she navigate the world she faces? She's remote from job centers like Jakarta or Surabaya. She's aware that the world is changing overnight and continually, it's dynamic. What does she do, right? She has to think of what are the pathways for her life, her social mobility, the prosperity of her and her family. So I think we need to keep these sorts of pictures in our head as we think about the numbers, which I'm about to jump into. So for Indonesia, we need new jobs, we need better paid jobs, and we need to get jobs in new sectors. Why is this? In 2045, Indonesia celebrates or will celebrate its 100th anniversary. And by that time, Vision 2045 is that Indonesia will be an upper middle income country, a high income country. To do that, it needs 60 million jobs. It needs wages that are 5 times higher, and all of this in a world in which skills are going to be disrupted massively. 44% of skills are going to be disrupted in the next 5 years based on the Future of Jobs report. So what is this young woman, when we think about her, she's a piece of this, and we've got to remember these are people all the way. And how do we accomplish these massive goals? We need all people to be involved, the inclusion point I'll come back to. We need highly productive workers, and we need adaptable workers. What about all workers? Well, there's going to be new entrants, but Indonesia has a female labour force participation rate of about 54%. Unless that is increased, Indonesia doesn't get to 2045. What about others, disabled entrants? We don't know the precise numbers, but it's a significant portion where we need to involve everybody in the workforce to be able to reach our ambitions. And productive workers. So we need the basic foundations of education which enable lifelong learning. We need a healthy workforce, and we need skilled workers. So this is what we've got to get to. And of course, adaptable in the context of the changing environment. So what do we do? Looking at Indonesia and thinking of that young woman in eastern Indonesia, Indonesia's challenge in thinking about skills, Airlangga mentioned the 17,000 islands, but it's about 6,000 inhabited islands. How do we reach these people? That's about inclusion. Inclusion geographically, in addition to ensuring that female labour force participation increases, disabled participation increases. That's a big challenge, to think about how you develop a skills program. The next chart, which I apologize you probably can't see very well, but it essentially shows that 25% of the workforce are currently in higher productivity jobs. And then there's a long tail of 75% of the workforce who are in very low productivity jobs. And remember I said we need wages to be 5 times higher. So we need to find a way to move people from that right side into the higher productivity activities, and we need to raise the productivity in those trailing sectors like the services areas. And of course, as many have said, these jobs are going to be changing all the time. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I think it's something that everybody is familiar with, but this box on the left side is really about what are the attributes of a skills entity that we need to have. It has to be responsive, has to be able to look at the information. Information is a critical piece, and one of my propositions will be that we need to think about Prakerja as a platform. The government is providing a platform, and the dynamism and the ability to respond come from the participation of a range of stakeholders, including the private sector. And so government will never keep up if it operates alone. You need to have others involved. And you know, the incentive structure is important, and all the skilling, reskilling, upskilling issues that have been mentioned already. So we've moved to this future entity where the skills mix and needs is very dynamic. And we need to think of models for lifelong learning that are able to work in that context. So when we look at Prakerja, I show a few numbers. I think a colleague from JPEL is here who will contribute to these numbers. It's various entities have found that Prakerja is really paying off. So Prakerja is essentially an electronic platform for skills development and lifelong learning. And so there are skills providers coming in who are private sector. There are job portals participating in the platform where they're seeking jobs. And so you can think of the information development as that young woman in Eastern Indonesia sitting there can say, there's growth of these types of jobs in this location. And rather than her having to go to Jakarta, which would be the traditional route, she would go to Jakarta, she would have to find a room, she would live for 1 year, at least probably, while she learns what the labour market looks like, and she tries to find a job. And you can imagine the negative social aspects that go along with that. So this Prakerja platform can let that young woman in Eastern Indonesia look for where the jobs are, identify the skills needed, and receive that training online. And so this is, you know, very fit for this Indonesian archipelago, but it does also offer lessons for other countries, I believe. So those people who've been through the 16, 17 million who've already been trained under Prakerja, they're more likely to get jobs, they get higher incomes, and as you'll see on the right side, it's been inclusive. So Indonesia has over 500 districts, and trainees have come from almost every district. I don't want to say every because I'm not sure about that, but I know it's nearly every district. So it's been tremendously inclusive as well. So let me go to the next. So this is my last slide, and this is what I would like to say my personal dream, if you like, of Prakerja is for the future, and I think it's the future also for many countries. So if we think about this box in the middle as the platform, this is now an electronic labour market. So if you are looking for a job, if you are looking for skills, or as an employer you are looking to find the right employee, as an economist we talk about search costs for labour, right? What is the method of reducing those search costs through a platform like this? And that's what's critical, because as we go into a more dynamic, changing world, those search costs are going to go up, because people have to know, the ordinary person, this woman in Eastern Indonesia, she has to know what's coming down the road, and she can't know because she's sitting out in Eastern Indonesia. There has to be a mechanism so people can find pathways to well-paid jobs. And my suggestion here is essentially growing Prakerja into that platform for Indonesia. So that's why I say it's just scratched the surface. It's had tremendous success, but I think this is the future. So the role of government here is to provide the platform as a basis. It provides standards, eligibility requirements to enable people to know what they're talking about. If the employer says, I need this type of IT worker. Everybody knows what that means, so there's commonality of language and understanding. There needs to be some public money, as under Prakerja now, there's a small stipend for those who are undertaking training. And as I've just already illustrated this point on taxonomy of job tasks. Now, Prakerja's not done all of these things yet, but to me, as I think about the Marrakesh Convention and reading that, I think that this Prakerja model offers a lot of the elements, at least, which looked for in the convention, and say it's already partway there. So our task in Indonesia is to make sure that there's a pathway for Prakerja to transition to this future vision of what labour markets look like in the longer term. There's 1,000 other issues I could talk about, Mr. Chairman, but I should stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neller. And it's very true that the platform is an interesting model for implementing policies, and we should learn from where it's been thought about. It's an interesting idea. We're kind of running late. As moderator, if the room allowed, what I would say is for the ones of you who have questions, to use the coffee break and the rest of the conference to chat with the panelists. But before closing, I tried to highlight 4 high-level ideas that I took from each of the presentation, and to try to give them to you as food for thoughts for the next steps of the conference. The first one, and I tried to look from a transformative power of adult learning and education. Even if change is volatile, we have to start from a strong foundation, a philosophy and a culture of learning, and to move, and policies and framework, and to move toward the unknown, but we have to do it in an inclusive and flexible way, to include all and be flexible to face change, and to really get inspired by the transformative power of lifelong learning. Second idea, it's going to be a journey, and not a one-step moment. It's going to be a long journey toward transformation. And in that journey, the discussion among us, conferences, and convening people together like we do now to exchange view and move together is an essential part of the journey, but also a strong monitoring. We need a strong structured monitoring to know where we are toward that change, and to know how we use the transformative power of adult learning. Third idea is the necessity to change, and in that regard, the intersectoriality of the governance from a government perspective, but also including all stakeholders, because it's together that we're going to understand the nature of the change we're facing and to transform and really use in full, including non-formal education, to use in full adult learning to implement the change. And from the last presentation, what really struck me is the nature and the magnitude of the change and its effect on people, and the job market is a good example. And in that perspective, therefore, inclusion is the road toward transformation. If we don't want a 2-tier, 3 tiers, a multi-tier society. And the transformative power of education is the transformation with all and for all. And the magnitude of that change, as you well presented, is major for every human being, and more particularly, as we all know, the more marginalized people. So I will, Madam MC, I will give you the floor and formally close this panel. Join me in just giving a good round of applause to our panelists.
Thank you, and thank you very much. We are now inviting everyone for a small photo session together, our speakers and moderator. Please stand. Yep, just in the center of the room. Yes, thank you. Perfect. As we're in Bali, 3, 2, 1, we say Bali. 3, 2, 1, Bali. One more time, 3, 2, 1, Bali. Let's give our applause. Thank you very much. We invite you to return to your seats. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and our honorable speakers for this plenary session. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, next we'll take a short break. You may enjoy coffee break served at the foyer area of the Karangasem Ballroom. Please return to this ballroom in 15 minutes to continue on the series of activities of the Inclusive Lifelong Learning Conference. Enjoy the well-deserved break.
locked down in different cities, and our virtual connection falls apart. Guess it's been too many years since California. Now the memories of us is all I have. See, one day I'm gonna reach ya, take a plane for many miles. We pretend that time didn't pass us by when we're on Mulholland Drive. I know it won't be long before dawn. Gotta be patient for a while. Someday.
To all delegates, we're now inviting you back into the main room. Once again, for those of you still outside, calling all delegates we are now inviting you back. If you still have your coffee, tea, or snacks in your hands, yes, you're welcome to bring it into the room. Come, join us for the next session of our Plenary 2. So once again, for those of you still outside, we are now inviting you back into the main room. Thank you.